thanks a lot for coming. Really appreciate it. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to this entire congregation for my last 13 years of growth as a conscientious person. I can't imagine being part of a more diverse, caring, active, welcoming group of people. It's been truly rewarding. I'll always remember a woman named Jane, who was the greeter here one summer day in 2005. She was genuinely interested in what it was that brought me here. I spent about 10 minutes explaining why. With a twinkle in her eye, she said, "Oh, you'll fit right in here." And so I did. And the first thing I noticed, other than the inspired architecture, was that for the first time in my life, I felt surrounded by some very enlightened elders. People who seem to walk their talk. People who stand up for their rights, as well as the rights of others. People who were quite active, raising money for various causes, marching, protesting, supporting the oppressed and exploited. In a short amount of time, I learned a lot about social justice, what it means, why we should participate in whatever ways we can. To be honest, there are many here who have been much more active and involved than I have. So I'm aware I have much room for growth still. We had come from different backgrounds, but I noticed immediately we had similar values. I had come from a background where beliefs were tantamount. Values existed, but were not always acted upon. And I was disillusioned with virtually every Christian religion I had come across. I knew there was great value in the teachings of Jesus, but I had been exposed to other books not included in the accepted gospels of mainstream Christianity. Books that had been buried in clay vessels for 1,700 years beneath the Egyptian desert, and only recently discovered and deciphered. It was the Nag Hammadi texts and also the Gospel of Judas. These books painted a very different picture of the teachings of Jesus and the significance of Mary Magdalene, Thomas, and Judas in particular. And it's not quite like the fiction of Dan Brown portrayed. It was really the writings of Joseph Campbell who encouraged me to seek further understanding, especially towards the goal of understanding universal mythology that exists in all religions. It was also him who inspired me to read the Bhagavad Gita, which has become one of my favorite spiritual texts, although I probably understand about a third of it. I've heard it said that Hinduism is the mother of all religions, although I'm not sure if this is true. Essentially, I became a seeker because of a troubled youth, perhaps. My mom died from cancer when I was about 6, and I bounced around a lot. From grades 6 to 12, I lived in about 8 different places in 2 states, and I had very little guidance in my mid to late teens, when kids like me typically find trouble. Well, I found it all right, and at age 19, and I'll avoid the details of this most difficult experience of my life. In a nutshell, I had encountered the brutality of the justice system, which so often is delivered at the hands of police. And I say that with reserve and respect, as I've known many good police officers, including 2 of my cousins, one of whom is a captain in the Bridgeport Police Department. It was the harsh reality of the justice system I had experienced, and it sent me into a tailspin. For about 20 years, I battled what I would now refer to as PTSD. I experienced extreme anxiety, sadness, depression, and suicidal tendencies. It was a most difficult experience to overcome. But I did, for the most part, and there were many factors that helped me reestablish a loving focus. I think the biggest factors were music, martial arts, and watching my daughters grow into beautiful young women. Trying my best to evolve into the father they deserved. As for the music, immediately after I got in trouble, I started going to Grateful Dead shows between court dates. And that kind of saved me for a while. At last I had found a kind tribe of people and became exposed to what I consider the greatest catalog of music I had ever heard. And this group of kind souls seemed to exist within, but separately from the cruel society I had been exposed to. This too was an illusion of sorts, although it served me at the time. It was there, in those stadiums, parking lots, and campgrounds, that I first learned the value of practicing a loving focus. But I still had much to learn. I lacked discipline and determination. So when my oldest daughter, Melissa, was about 7, we started studying Taekwondo together. It was a great learning and bonding experience for us both. In later years, when I began helping Grandmaster Vita teach weekly classes to kids at the Newington Teen Center, my youngest daughter, Ariana, joined us. It was a great blessing to learn and grow under his guidance. He alternated often between hard and soft style martial arts. He understood the value of both, and his method of teaching could also be hard or soft, depending on the situation. I remember once he made an entire class of kids sit in silence to meditate for the hour that they thought they were going to get to kick and flip me. We learned to respect this dragon. The kids were talking nonstop and not paying attention that day. They paid attention from there on out, as did I. I did several martial arts demonstrations at various middle schools in the area with him. He loved kids, and so did I. Throughout these years, he was teaching me every bit as much as he was teaching those kids. One particular bizarre demonstration we did was this. In order to demonstrate the power of mind over matter and the power of undivided focus, he would have me spread a burlap bag of shattered wine bottles on the gym floor. He would remove his shirt and lie down on his bare back right on the glass shards. I would place 2 full cinder blocks on his chest and then smash them with a 20-pound mallet until only chunks and dust remained. While he never once got cut or bruised, I once cut my leathery carpenter hands brushing the glass off his body. I watched him go into his alpha state many times. He literally redefined boundaries that I once thought were impossible. He had a favorite saying, which hung on a banner in the football locker room for many years at Newington High School, as he was also a football coach. It is not the answer that is so important, but rather, what is the question? I began seeking better questions naturally. We all did. And so I give him great credit for teaching me the art of focus. And I give my daughters great credit for teaching me about unconditional love. So I began to seek ways to utilize a focus of love. And that's about the time I first came here, to this meeting house. And my daughters became involved with the awesome youth program here. After being invited to chaperone a youth group ski trip, I also got involved. I really enjoyed these kids, and they taught me so much. They had such freedom of thought, and room and encouragement to explore, much different than the youth groups I once belonged to. For instance, Mount Olive Baptist Church in Conyers, Georgia, once sent me and my group on an all-expense-paid weekend seminar centered around the topic of how the devil wrote most of the rock and roll. We picked apart songs like Hotel California and Stairway to Heaven for satanic clues. And we sang gospel songs. And it really confused me because I really loved rock and roll. They did once bring me to an Atlanta Braves game, and I got to see the famous knuckleballer, Phil Necro, throw those butterflies. That was cool. But anyway, this youth group in this meeting house was an eye and heart-opening experience for me. I realized that these kids were way ahead of where I was at that age. It was here that I tried to put into practice the spiritual lessons I had learned from both my readings and Christian background. I became an assistant youth advisor, and I started helping with the soup every month, volunteering to take delivery over to the Church Street Eats. Several years ago, when the previous youth advisor, Denise Akafie, moved to Africa for a while, I became the youth advisor for a few years. The first thing I did was buy some new pots to expand our soup making from about 8 gallons to about 20 per month. I decided to make the same soups month after month for consistency. 1 pot of vegetable for the many vegetarians and vegans here, and 5 pots of chicken vegetable. I began buying mostly organic vegetables and free-range chickens whenever possible, just as if I was making soup for loved ones, because in fact I was doing just that. The kids have been great, chopping vegetables at record pace, and for the most part, safely. The congregation has been very supportive, buying about 3 to 4 gallons each month at $3 a cup. Janice Newton has been particularly helpful, often making her famous cookies or mousses for us to sell also, and putting in extra money whenever we needed it. So, for the most part, we are a self-sustaining operation, collecting enough here from you all to pay for next month's groceries. And I've gotten to know many of the people at Church Street Eats, as well as those who go there regularly for a Sunday meal. Wonderful people. In fact, Rose Fichera Egan, who started that particular soup kitchen about 15 years ago, has become one of my heroes. Despite being in a wheelchair, she has boundless energy and love towards the poor and homeless of Hartford. Her vision and inspiration created the first soup kitchen in Hartford to serve a Sunday lunch, which often includes our soup. We deliver about 16 gallons per month there for the last several years. It has really been one of the joys and honors of my life to participate in this program. And for me, it made the practice of a loving focus a reality and a most rewarding part of my life. I would say it changed my life, and certainly for the better. I've learned from my spiritual studies that I am a creator of reality, just as we all are, whether we do so consciously or unconsciously. I can choose to create more desirable realities, or I can certainly choose to create less desirable realities, both for myself and the others around me. I learned to take responsibility for the realities I myself was creating, and also to accept those realities beyond my control. It is definitely my goal to experience heaven on earth. Where else would I experience it? I'm also keenly aware that hell can also be experienced on earth, and this is a reality beyond the control of so many of our brothers and sisters throughout humanity. And yet clearly, it is within our collective power to create heaven instead. So I'm really happy to be among a group of people here who are actively working towards that same goal. When we work together, we become collective creators. Much more can be accomplished. Solutions can be found and acted upon. I can't tell you how many times that has happened to me in my interactions with this congregation. Several times this week even, working with Sue on this service. So thank you, Sue. I appreciate it. She helped me stay on point and create a message that might be helpful. It happens monthly when our youth group chop up about 60 pounds of vegetables and then help clean up our beautiful kitchen in an act of charity and love. It makes it much easier to develop a loving focus under such conditions. And once it happens, it ripples outward. It affects the people around us. It is proven to affect animals and plants. In fact, there was a Japanese water researcher named Dr. Masaru Emoto who proved the value of a loving focus with scientific experiments on water crystals. His theory was in line with other theorists who claim that everything is comprised of energy and has a particular resonance. Water crystals, when viewed with a high-power microscope, proved his theories. He demonstrated the power of thoughts and words first. He would isolate jars of water, place signs on them with opposing values, such as love or hate, gratitude or greed, apathy or compassion. The crystals of love, gratitude, and compassion were absolutely gorgeous, like intricate snowflakes with amazing geometric patterns, while the others were misformed, inconsistent, and ugly. He did similar experiments with music, both angry and exuberant music, with similar results. And in my opinion, he correctly surmised that since we are comprised of about 70% water, our bodies pick up on vibrations from these resonances just as easily. I'm sure all of us have picked up on the vibrations of the thoughts and words of others. And sometimes the vibrations don't match the words. Dogs are real good at this. Try telling a dog, good dog, in an angry voice, or sit in a lackadaisical voice. It doesn't work. They pick up on the tone and vibration. The actual words are secondary. The vibration or resonance is primary. Dogs pick up on it instantly. People tend to forget about these natural universal laws. The stresses of living in modern society often overwhelm our natural instincts and cause us to create more disharmony in an already chaotic environment. If I may quote His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, because we all share this planet Earth, we must learn to live in harmony and peace with each other and with nature. This is not just a dream, but a necessity. He said that during his speech after receiving the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989. And it truly is a necessity, even more so now, 29 years later. So how can we learn to live in harmony? Of course, Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. And that's a tough one if your neighbor happens to be a jerk or has political viewpoints diametrically opposed to yours. But suppose, during horrifying situations like these, we could think back to a time when we once believed in things we now know to be false, or clung to ideals that we have long since abandoned for better ones. We can have a moment of patience and understanding, establish a loving focus, and then share our perspective. It's a game changer. It's how heart-centered people operate. I've witnessed it here many times. It's changed my perspective for the better many times also. I believe this is a heart-centered congregation, and as such, we are a very troubled group of people in the present environment. Without getting into the political debates that seem to engulf our lives these days, nobody can deny that we are living in times that are definitely not heart-centered. Deep divisions, many times fueled by relentless propaganda, are causing chaotic situations to arise on a near daily basis. It almost appears as if the dream of creating a heart-centered society is on the ropes. Indeed, that may very well be what is at stake. And so, this is certainly not the time to abandon the art of maintaining a loving focus. It is not a good time to become discouraged with feelings of helplessness. We are not helpless nor hopeless unless we ourselves decide we are. None but ourselves can free our minds, Bob Marley sang. And as countless spiritual leaders have pointed out, nothing short of nonviolent revolution will be effective. Consider this statement from Martin Luther King Jr. At the center of nonviolence stands the principle of love. Nonviolence is a powerful and just weapon which cuts without wounding and ennobles the person who wields it. It is a sword that heals. I would suggest we collectively lift those swords and charge directly into the battle. And again, I refer to the further advice from Bob Marley. He who fight and run away, live to fight another day. Which I interpret to mean, take care of yourself. Be sure to disengage regularly and maintain your strength. The battle is long. In my mind, the real battle is between love and fear. One or the other becomes the primary focus. One or the other becomes the motivating factor, both on a personal or a community basis. And whether we become scared or angry on a regular basis, love becomes clouded over and fear becomes the focal point. We cannot afford for this to happen. It's already happened to many, judging by the events of the day. Fear will not be defeated with more fear. Darkness cannot be driven out with darkness. Only light can do that, Martin Luther King Jr. said. And furthermore, darkness is not inherently bad, just as light is not inherently good. I once saw a random quote on the internet that said, light and dark are two different things, but we need both. for too much light burns us, while in darkness we cannot see. But together we have shade. And we could probably use some shade today. It's balance we're after. But there's no room for fear in a loving focus. It automatically becomes a fearful focus and contributes to the growing darkness. I've done it myself. I've tried both. Even to this day, I get stuck in a fear zone. And it's never helpful when I do. For me, music helps me stay in the love zone. There are many times when I feel only music can change my vibe. I'm very particular about the music I listen to, and I've become wary of negative or angry music. Lyrics are very important to me, every bit as important as the musical notes or the instruments. I can feel their resonance deeply. I'm sure many of you do also. I'm well aware of how important music is to this congregation, and Sam's fabulous musicianship is testament to that. Do you remember that "While My Guitar Gently Weeps" he did a few months ago? Wow. Play it again, Sam. That was beautiful, beautiful. And we've always had an excellent choir and many fine musicians throughout, which I think is an awesome blessing. Obviously, many here have placed their loving focus on music, and I say bravo. Let's continue to inspire each other in small and large ways. Let's continue to take care of each other. Let's not let fear consume our vibrations, because we need each other now more than ever. I'll leave you with the infamous words of Dickie Betts from the Allman Brothers. People, can you feel it? Love is everywhere.